Chapter 2. Splitting in the Child. Many victims are small and insignificant. Professor Krivoruchka's father, Leonid Alexandrovich, was in the middle of carnage as a child, and he did not have anything left besides the hope that the new, stronger force would help him to survive. He was only 12 years old and was cut out from his family because of an inhumane doctrine created by the criminally minded. The feeling of being small and insignificant inside the killing machine is devastating, and it is hard to imagine being contained by the slaughter device to be consumed at any minute. The immoral minds are rigidly fragmented. They appoint a vicious, heartless fragment proclaimed subhuman as a representative to deal with the dissimilar. The heartless fragment has a rigid structure in its kinesthetic and is not sensitive to oral and visual stimulations. It does not care about the sounds of crying and visual pictures of victims slaughtered and covered with dirt in mass graves. The kinesthetic fragment is involved in marches and feels good by exterminating the undesired. It does not have any ethics or morals. This immoral fragment has a goal of emptying lots of space for more marching. It does whatever it desires and moves wherever it wants. Because of the criminal intent of the apparatus of pretentiousness, Leonya was left without a mother's care and depended on strangers who had mercy on him and could nurture him. He did not have any means to protect himself, and he needed to survive somehow. No one cared what happened to him. When we have an individual who is willing to burn or kill the self, we are dealing with someone who is expecting somehow to benefit from his actions. Perhaps one is in the trap of grandiosity and dreams of being the hero and having the admiration of many. If Leonya, in protest to this treatment, would have committed suicide, no one would have even blinked. When we do not receive enough understanding, we victims think about retaliation. We want someone else to feel sorry for us. We feel that the world is cold and inconsiderate. As the real heroes, we kill the self to avoid the humiliation of being executed and to escape perceived misery. By the brave act of giving up our lives, we are pushing the world to express human feelings. If Leonya killed the self, he would not get any feelings of remorse from anyone. He only was relying on the new killing machine to defend himself and to get revenge for the slaughtered. To survive, he may rely only on a miracle. In a time when his surroundings were a part of the killing machine, the marvel was finding the one part out of many that was not frozen and had a warm human heart and was listening to him. Leonya set out for the city of hope, asking passersby for directions and begging for food. When passing through a town, he would find his way to the marketplace and the bizarre woman who asked many questions, to which he had answers prepared well in advance, would give him bread and sometimes a cucumber. When walking through a village, he would knock on doors. Some bread, he'd plead. Where are you going? Where are your relatives? My mother died of a pain in her stomach. Father is at the front, and I am on my way to Hope, where I have an aunt. Sometimes he would even get a bowl of hot Ukrainian borscht. He was not afraid of the Germans, because they paid no attention to him. There were many children roaming along the countryside at that time. Finally, he reached Hope and found the Soviet Collective Street. He stood outside, hoping Aunt Polina or one of her children would come out, but no one appeared. Suddenly, he recognized a woman who was carrying a pail of full milk. It was the woman who would bring milk to Aunt Polina, and he recalled that she was friendly. "Auntie, don't you remember me? I visited this house last summer." The little boy was looking for help because he was a small leftover of humanity. Leonya was completely devastated. He was still alive, but for how long? He may well be consumed any time by the killing machine. He was completely insignificant. A dog or a cat had more power than he had. He was marked to be killed, and anyone had a right to do it without any reprisal. Even more, many would applaud the killer. For the boy, chance to survive inside the killing machine was very slim. The boy who lost his mother was looking for a replacement. The worst tragedy for a boy is to lose his caring and loving mother. The presence of a mother is crucial in the development of a child. Being without parents or any caretaker in the middle of a war made my Leonya's chances for survival very slim. The brutality machine shredded any hope he had. He was jumping to embrace the first face who would possibly care for him. This moment could be a meeting between a child and a surrogate mother. Actually, it was possible to have an immediate bonding. Many children were saved by complete strangers who on an impulse became adoptive parents and helped a child. The bonding of the stranger and the child is a genuine meeting. It is an act of complete selflessness for a surrogate parent to forget about the dangers and prioritize the safety of a child. This is an example of a dialogue between motherhood and the self, an episode of unification of the most beautiful fragments which enlighten the further life of the adopting mother and the adopt child. Leonya was looking for a replacement for his mother, who had nurtured him for 12 years. The woman was selling milk, which is the most nurturing substance. The milkwoman, who hardly remembered him but had a selfless heart, helped him. She had a very symbolic occupation for nurturing and for supplying the nutrients the child needed. She also was the supplier of the needed emotions, a good attitude and compassion. Professor Krivoruchko mentioned that as a fragment, the milkwoman had a kinesthetic base because she had generated some comforting movements to support the child, or at least provide temporary relief. The bonding between mother and child is an example of dialogue, even when words were not spoken. The bonding is similar to the kinesthetic feeling of belonging. After the loss of his mother, Leonya was looking for the feeling of belonging, the feeling of safety, protection, and trust. The boy was desperate to feel again a closeness to his mother, even though she was dead. He needed someone as a replacement for his mother in a bid to forget the horror of the last several days. The unification with sensitivity and the split from fears might occur at the same time. Our unification with sensitivity and our split from fears may be a simultaneous process. When we are unifying with something, we are also splitting from something else. When we are splitting from our fears, we are having a dialogue with and meeting our courage. A stranger may possibly become a savior. We do not know in what form the savior is coming to rescue us from a killing machine, but this represents a dialogue with our courage. During the darkness of pretentiousness, our world was terribly insensitive. Only a few had the courage to allow the self to be sensitive. The milkwoman became Leonya's savior. Her heart felt that the child was in despair. Leonya approached her and introduced himself. She remembered him, but still he was a stranger, and she was not under any obligation to help him. She also knew one secret about Leonya and clearly understood that by helping Leonya she may be in danger. Despite any frightening thoughts, she decided to take this risk. It was a mother's heart that could not allow her to leave a child without any help. The stranger was unified with her feeling of sensitivity, and she split from her fears. The unification with sensitivity is very risky. She was helping someone who was hunted and marked for eradication. During the time of occupation, the sensitivity was a luxury that not everyone had the courage to afford. By helping Leonya, she was putting at risk her own family. We know many instances where some unselfish people helped victims of persecution, but there were more situations when no one bothered to help. The split from feelings of fear may be a lifelong process, or it may be immediate. The milkwoman did not need much time to dwell on her limitations. The presence of a helpless child mobilized her courage. Usually we are driven by our sensitivity to help, but fears paralyze our effort. When the life of a child is at stake, however, then instinct takes over our common sense and miracles may happen. The rainy day was changed by the shining sun, and the stranger became a savior. Yes, boy, I remember you. You lived at Polina's house with your mother and little sister. Everyone here left as soon as the war started, and where are your parents? And are you here alone? What trouble, what misery. She poured him a cup of milk, and after he gulped it down, she gave him another one. Come with me. I have a place for you. But tell others as little as possible about yourself. Do you understand me? Leonya nodded his head. The milkwoman took him to a building that bore a small sign, Home for Children. She entered the house and came out with an elderly man, the director. You stay here, and I shall be visiting you. Be well, she said to Leonya. She quietly left the house, and before she left, she gave Leonya another cup of milk. Only later did Leonya understand that she had saved his life. The dialogue between sensitivity and courage may possibly bring a great satisfaction when we realize what was done. In the many years after the war, the milkwoman met a middle-aged man who introduced himself as a boy whose life she had saved. She cried because she realized that her existence had not been wasted, and she did not have reason to be proud of her life. She had a feeling of satisfaction that despite her fears and common sense limitations, she was able to help a child. That moment, which did not continue for more than half an hour, enlightened all of her life. In that short time, she unified with excellence and split from mediocrity. She experienced a real meeting with her sensitivity and courage. Coming to terms with safety. Personal safety is important for survival. Leonia did not have a safe place and may have even lost hope that this place even existed. He did have the strength to continue his search and to not give up, because we all have a dream. Our dream is a place we are able to come when we need to be safe. Leonia split from his family, from his identity, from his home with clean bedding and hot meals, and from many other things that we enjoy without second thoughts. After being hunted as a savage animal, he was fearful of everyone. The safe haven gave him a chance to have a meeting with safety, which is a complementary process. When we get more feelings of being safe, then we have fewer feelings of fear. The safety comes together with feelings of trusting the surrounding environment. Leonia eventually got to the safer place. Safety, as well as danger, may be on separate levels. When someone moves from a very dangerous place to a less dangerous one, he feels that the new place is a safe haven and that he will never leave. Even a hero needs a safe place for a short time. Only a few individuals have the strength to leave protection. If they have the strength to leave the security, they are heroes. Sometimes even a hero leaves a shelter, and his reason for leaving is to strengthen the self, fight evil, be alert, and to keep his identity from being compromised by the comfort of the sanctuary. Sometimes we have the safe haven for only a short time, but even if it was for a brief moment, the most important goal is to recapture the feeling of being safe. If the feeling of safety, as a cocoon, surrounds us for just a minute, we receive the strength to go out and face reality again. It is very important for the quest of survival to have a motivation of looking forward and believing that somewhere in the universe we may have the luck to feel a safe haven. When we involuntarily leave a safe place, then it is a special situation. We are getting thrown out of a place of comfort to a world of injustice and danger. The rejection is more painful when we are kicked out by someone whom we trust and who appeared to be our savior. Leonia liked everything about the children's house, the food, his bed, the kind-hearted director. He remained there for over a month and might have lived there longer if not for the other children who felt that he was frightened and started to tease him and called him a coward. Then someone called him Abam, and the name stuck. The director heard about it and called him to the office, and he had a serious look on his face. Leonia, why do children call you names? Are you a Jew? Leonia shook his head. Oh, they are just teasing me. In this very hard time of his life, the secret identity followed Leonia and destroyed his effort for surviving. Leonia's unknown identity scared the director, who appeared to be a kind man. He became fearful and threw the helpless child out to a place of menace. Perhaps one who appeared to be so nice reveals a lot of viciousness. To expose another to certain death, an instinct for protecting a child did not work for this man, who pretended to be an educator. Leonia never met the director again, but sometimes in his dreams he wanted to understand him and meet him, but he also understood that he would not be able to have a dialogue with this man. Despite our desire to have a meeting with everyone, we only have the opportunity to experience an encounter when another human soul wants to meet. The man who called himself a mentor did not contribute to unification with the feelings of safety and trust. He split from humanity and was driven by feelings of fear and by conformity to evil. He rejected the opportunity to become part of unification. He crossed the border and left his own humanity somewhere else, become a part of splitting forces. The director denied the boy a chance of survival, but nevertheless, for a short while, the boy felt safe and was able to have a meeting with safety. Splitting from feelings of trust. An encounter with victimization also splits us from the fundamental feelings of trust. The injured by abhorrence do not trust their surroundings anymore. The victims of hate crimes are usually society's minority, who are persecuted by haters and are not protected enough from predators. We do not know if our destiny is written in advance and why things happen the way they do. Someone who has become a victim carries the label of being a victim throughout their whole life. Many victims are paying the heavy price for survival. They become mentally broken, and they do not have the strength to recuperate. Only a few may get over the trauma of being victimized. Just as Leonia, during the traumatic event, we often detach from reality. We have many things beyond our conscious awareness. Leonia did not have a place to go to and did not have any means to get food, clothes, or even a place to sleep. In the moment when the director told him to leave, his world fell apart. Surprisingly, in the most tragic moment of his life, Leonia did not feel any animosity towards the director or blame him. He did not feel that a director was duty-bound to protect a child. He also did not feel that the director betrayed his feeling of trust. On the contrary, he felt guilty that he did not protect the director and made him feel uncomfortable. Only later in life did he realize that all his feelings of losing trust were all on a subconscious level. He felt as a boy he did something wrong. Consciously, he did not recognize the fact that the director had deceived the child. Leonia did not have the knowledge of his own future, and at that time he did not know which would be better, if he stayed in the orphanage or ended up back on the street. He did not know that he was only one of the few luckiest who were saved. He was not aware that leaving the orphanage was a way to get back his identity and recuperate some bits from his previous life. Leonia did not know that Providence wanted him to be a victorious survival. His fate was not to be scared and hide, but to become a partisan decorated with medals and a veteran of war. His destiny was to have a family, to be a professional man, and to prosper as a manager of an atomic energy plant. Leonia, who was a victim and was marked for extermination, survived despite many odds. In the meantime, he did not know about his future. In our life, many paradoxical things happen. Sometimes leaving the sanctuary is better than staying in, but it is always a struggle to leave. Sometimes one way to leave safety is to be thrown out from it. In times of danger, the feeling of safety is very corrupting and may change our own destiny. If Leonia had stayed in sanctuary, who knows what kind of man he would have become. Sometimes to get over a victim's role and preserve our identity, we need to leave despite the comfort of the safe place. Because we do not know our destiny, it is always a struggle to preserve identity. Even were we not victimized by radicals, we have a long journey to become a winner and to have an identity. No one is successful without the struggle of unification. The workers without qualification are just many on the employment market. Because we want to be important, we are not proud of our identity. It takes a long time and many struggles to become a needed specialist and to carry an identity as a professional, but we do not want to wait. As victims, we get confused, and for a long period of time we are avoiding the truth and we are not clear who we are. Some of us are constructing the false identity, and some of us will deny everything that happened to us or to make it sound funny. Other beliefs were fantasy. Leonia believed that another safe haven was close by, and he could not give up. His understanding was that the safe havens did not show up without a struggle. It was a reward for the endured sufferings, otherwise it would not be so fantastic. Leonia had a strong belief in miracles, and his staunch resolve was not to give up hope, and it spared him from despair. He split with misery and unified himself with hope. Unification with the miracle. The unification with the miracle has a very strong effect on us that changes all of our chemistry, even the lighting around us. It takes us to complete surprise when a miracle happens. We are shocked and we do not accept it right away. All of us somehow are looking for a miracle, but when it happens, it is completely unbelievable. We tell the self the phenomenon we are observing is not a real miracle. We accept the miracle only after struggles and doubts. Professor Krivoruchko says that to understand the effect of a miracle, we need to reach to the bottom of our endurance, when our life is not worth anything and our existence is on the brink of disappearance. When we are experiencing a miracle, everything around us becomes distinctive. The miracle brings the feeling of meaning to our life, and then comes hope and aspiration, together with a sense of relief. Even if nothing changes in our surroundings, when we are waiting for a miracle to happen, we see the bright light that comes from within it. It is as if our life were dull and gray, without any other colors around us, without any sensations and hopes, and then right away it becomes brighter. The phenomenon becomes ecstasy to our life in many dissimilar colors and shades. No one could predict the miracle that changed Leonia's life. He spent a week looking for the dairy woman, but could not find her anywhere. He slept in a woodshed, but the nights were getting colder and he would awaken in the morning half frozen. All day he roamed the streets without food.
the market women had changed completely. In the past, they would always give him something to eat, but now their answer was, "God will help you. Our own children are hungry." One morning, he saw a group of peasants near a wagon full of potatoes, and they were eating bread and cucumbers and onions. Leonia suddenly recognized his father among them. He carefully looked at the man to make sure, and there was no mistake. The moment that his father stepped out of the group, Leonia ran over to him and said quietly, "Papa!" Krivoruchko Sr. turned around, and Leonia saw that he looked petrified. "Son, how did you get here? Where is Mother?" On seeing that, Leonia was about to burst into tears, and he said quickly, "My son, you must not speak to me here. Leave right now for the village of Potatvilatka. Take the main road, and I will be waiting for you in front of the first hut. We are leaving soon." Father went over to the wagon and returned with bread and a cucumber and an onion. This moment of miracle changed everything in Leonia's life. The day was still rainy and the peasants were nasty, but everything changed in one moment. This moment unified Leonia with a miracle, and this unification gave him a chance to have a future. He became an important man and had many pleasant days in his life. In a moment of unification with a miracle, he split from death and all its atrocities. He became a boy who found his father, and his father took responsibility for his safety and well-being. And for the first time, Leonia felt safe and warm and happy and full of energy. The unification with a miracle changed his chemistry. The unification of father and son. The fragments of the son and father are signs of stability and symbolize the natural passage of all wisdom through generations. The unification of the son with his father is very important for the two of them and also for future generations. Professor Krivoruchko declared that he is representing a new generation and that he did not experience the atrocity of the war. Nevertheless, his psyche has the fragments of his father, Leonia, and his grandfather, Krivoruchko Sr. Those fragments are very important to show the organization of his psyche. His psyche has a very stable structure with its concept of unification of the son and the father. Leonia was a survivor, and grandfather was the rescuer of his son. We see the suffering son who found his father, and the father the son under his protection. The tragedy of the survivors is tremendously big, and the victim is the whole family. The victims of the dead, as well as the others who are still alive, including the children of the survivors. It is impossible to calculate how many generations of survivors would carry a trauma. By observing these survivors of atrocities, we may see already 4 generations of Armenians who carry the trauma of genocide. The psyche of the survivors is structured around the trauma. The important aspect in the future relationship of children of survivors with the children of the ones who were carriers of the atrocities. Usually, as the young children of a distinctive ethnicity, we have an ability to relate to others who are of a similar age. The children of survivors are an exception. Leonia remembered that in the marketplace he saw the young native woman of a domineering ethnicity buying vegetables in the company of the enemy's officer. The fascist officer probably saw the hungry look in Leonia's eyes. He searched in his pockets and found a candy which was still in its wrap. Shaking the candy in front of him, he called to Leonia, "Do not be scared, and come here." Leonia obeyed, and the officer gives him a candy. Leonia was holding this candy as something most precious. He would remember this candy all of his life, though he was puzzled by the unexplainable insanity of this time. The enemy officer had shown a fatherly attitude to nurture the starving boy. If the officer knew that Leonia was an undesirable, then his attitude was arbitrary. The same officer who showed kindness to prolong the life of the starving child without any second thought would have pushed him into the gas chamber to die. Leonia witnessed the duality of the role of the enemies during the war. He observed that the side that characterized the nature of the man to protect a helpless child was combined with a monster that was preying on the little children. For many generations, it would be tough to reconcile the monster who eats children with a loving father. The combination does not make any sense and makes everything very confusing. It's the question still not answered. How do we get captured by hatred and viciousness? The psyche is split and is in turmoil when the fragments of son and father are conflicting. As children, we see the father in every adult. Fortunately, Leonia met his real father, who would do everything to save him from harm. His father, by saving him, would establish the continuation of his lifeline. This moment was very symbolic because the wisdom of this unity comes from our dreams. The meeting of son and father is a confirmation of stability and unification of our psyche. It is impossible to have many parallel processes of the unification and the split. In the meantime, Leonia started walking. About 3 hours later, the wagon with his father passed him. It started to rain, and Leonia hastened his pace toward Pokatilavka. It was dark when he reached the village, but Leonia's father was there. His conviction that his wife and children were evacuated had vanished. He continued to keep hope alive because if his son had saved himself, perhaps his wife and the younger child were also alive. On seeing Leonia, he threw himself at him. His son's clothes were wet, so he put his quilted coat over the boy and took him to the cookhouse. There he prepared the best he was able to find, hot potatoes, cucumbers, and a piece of lard, and he watched his son eat. It is true that a healthy mind does not have the ability to be involved in many parallel processes at the same time. We cannot produce separately unification and splitting at the same time. We need to put two of these processes on hold until we are ready to continue. We process our feelings sequentially. First, we need to weep for the passing of our dearest before we may enjoy survivors. Leonia was united with his father, but he also brought to his father an announcement of death. For Krivoruchko Sr., in one moment, his son provided only one rationale to be alive, but also despair was very strong and was splitting him from joy. Perhaps only the complementary responses might be processed. Contrary to the complementary, the two completely opposite processes did not run independently. It is impossible to have the opposite responses at the same time. Krivoruchko Sr. was not able to express his terrible pain of misery and joy at the same moment. Even though he was unified with his son, he was broken by the news of his family's demise. He could not express joy that his son had survived until he could grieve for the loved ones that were dead. It is easy to say that we need to celebrate life when someone has died, even if it is a complementary process. But in many instances, celebration is not possible. When our loved ones are butchered and put in graves of life, we cannot celebrate life. We are in sorrow about the torture and barbarism they experienced. The truth about massacre is unreal and horrible. Krivoruchko Sr. lost his wife, who had given birth to his children. He had also lost his daughter and his old father. His father was an elderly man, but for children, their parents do not have an age. His family did not deserve their fate, and he could not understand why everything in his life was being destroyed. He was not able to have an explanation for all the madness surrounding him. He was a soldier and knew how to fight another soldier, but he did not understand how someone had the viciousness to kill helpless children, women, and elderly. He was not able to celebrate life, and he felt miserable because of the death of his family. For Leonia, the meeting with his father was an end of his suffering, but for his father, the meeting with his son brought torturing grief. The message of his wife's, daughter's, and father's death came together with his son's survival. He felt guilty that he did not show happiness because he did not have the power to do anything with the self. The tears came from his eyes, and he looked at his son, but he saw his wife and his daughter and father making the tears run faster. Very soon, the son and father were crying together. They did not talk about the losses, but they were grieving together for their loved ones. They were unified in grief. First, they needed to say farewell to the loved ones, and then they could enjoy their meeting. The split between being alive and humanity. In some instances, we are split between survival and humanity. In times of atrocities and criminality, the meeting between father and son has significance. They are alive, and they did not do anything inhuman to survive. The unification of father with son plus dialogue between them is a trinity, because enormous luck is present and is a very important moment in their salvation. The meeting between them reminded faultless soul wandering in the butcher shop who eventually found all the others that they had not lost their humanity. We often pay with our life to be human. Many of us would not leave our relatives behind to die alone. Many prefer to die as human beings rather than to live as monsters. The unanswered questions are about how the world was able to tolerate this massacre. How was the world presenting aspiration to be civilized when at the same time it allowed the defenseless to be butchered?
Where was the world population after all? How could we look in the eyes of survivors whom we failed to protect? How would the world react if one of the survivors was a cannibal? We may feel that this is despicable. If everything in the world has its purpose, we are learning something from our experiences, but how may we find any edifying message in this mess? Maybe in the future, when we become more sophisticated, we will be capable of understanding what happened. But for now, nothing makes sense, and we are confused. The victims need survival skills, but there is a limit to their vigor. If they are losing their humanity, then what is the reason of survival? The question is, what is more important than life? Professor Krivoruchko's grandmother, Rivka, decided that she would rather die than leave her sick daughter and her old father. Professor Krivoruchko also confirmed that he is strictly kosher, but in that time, despite all the rules of the kosher, which included not eating pork product, his father was feeding his son with salted lard, which was pork fat. When we are in danger of death from starvation, may we disregard dietary laws? Our relationship with God is based on the notion that He will always forgive if we ask for forgiveness. By eating lard, Leonya broke a biblical law. Would he be punished for that? Leonya did not know much about religion, because in the Soviet collective, the religious ethic was not respected. He was victim of atrocities and viciousness and needed to survive. Nevertheless, when faced with the dilemma to eat the pork product, many soldiers of Muslim background preferred to commit suicide than to eat pork product. It is always a line between good and evil, and sometimes it's hard to see the difference. In the city of Leningrad, which was blockaded from food supplies by enemies, 1 million died from starvation. Few who did survive this ordeal remembered it. In the marketplaces, there was always fresh meat to buy, and the vendors called it rabbit. But was it human flesh? Everyone has a good idea where this meat came from. The desperate did not want to look deeper for the truth. And as last hope for survival, they did buy this meat, and it's not easy to judge them. We do not need to speculate how those who have bought the meat in the blockaded city feel about surviving. The line between life and death is very murky. It is against any belief to eat human flesh. But what about when we are near the end? Do we have the strength to resist? How many bought the questionable meat on the market of the blockaded city? We do not judge them. We also do not know how we would respond when we would have that same choice, to be alive or to be human. How do we deal with cannibalism? Somewhere there exists a turning point. Keep our humanity or die. We have many excuses for killing in a fight as a last resort to survive. But do we have any excuse to eat human flesh and to become a cannibal? How do we deal with someone who consumed another human to stay alive? We have a choice, which is to lose our humanity and to be cannibals. And we also have another choice, to give up our life and to die in order to remain a human being. But most important, we do not have the luxury to be concerned with issues that others may call stupid. The kinesthetic dialogue. Our kinesthetic dialogue may possibly be triggered by our visual and oral communication. It is always a hope when we did not see the tragedy with our own eyes. We hope until the scary words are said. When we grieve together, we have a meeting and a dialogue too, which is not necessarily only the verbal dialogue, but also may be kinesthetic, when our energy is combined with our body's movements. The kinesthetic dialogue, as well as oral and visual, may be of grief or love and has a very strong unifying effect. Our unification in grief is more kinesthetic than oral or visual forms of demonstration. In grief, we have similar grieving postures. Our kinesthetic responses in grief are congruent with the responses of others, which are stroked by sorrow until the last word is said. Somewhere deep inside, we continue begging that a miracle might happen. The hope vanished in the moment when everything was said, and there was not any place left for hope. Leonya told his father everything. His father wanted to cry but could not. He was unable to force the self to express joy at his son's survival. He felt as if he were turning into a stone. When he recovered, he saw his son sleeping at the table. This small, wet bundle, his child, had been doomed to perish, but he had survived despite all the evil beasts. The father carefully lifted his son, carried him into sleeping quarters, and put him in his own bunk. He did not sleep that night at all. Krivoruchko Sr. had too much to figure out, starting with the meeting of his son, then the horrible news, and eventually grieving together.
It is impossible to overcome the loss of a wife, daughter, and father brutally murdered by evil forces. The injustice was so strong that the organization of the psyche broke down and never recovered in the future generations. Professor Krivoruchko has distinct ways to get involved in dialogues. He mentions that his grandfather and father had strong verbal abilities, but that their dialogue was not verbal. Their dialogue was kinesthetic and prevented the generational break of their psyches. Despite heavy losses, their psyches did not stop functioning. The reason was in this miraculous unification of father with his son and their surviving. The tragedy for a father of losing his loved ones may have been the end of his family, but the meeting with his son was a promise of continuation. He needed to have a purpose that would give him strength of existing, functioning, and moving forward to the unknown, even though he did not have any idea with what kind of fate he would be faced. Everything was disparate when he was grieving with his son after their losses. Suddenly he knew he needed to get over this grief and start taking care of his son. Leonia needed to be around somebody who would motivate him to keep active in this world, continue his kinesthetic functioning, and keep his hopes alive. The words he said to his father about the death of his mother, his sister, and his grandfather triggered the crying and other kinesthetic responses about the loss of the loved ones. When he woke, he was able to properly express his sorrow together with his father. After months of running away from his feelings, Leonia was safe to show his feelings without any fears. After what the son had said about the last day of seeing his mother, Krivoruchko Sr. and Leonia did not talk. They cried and hugged and were very close to others in a deep sorrow. The ordinary issues unified with the dramatic. The ordinary may perhaps be easily unified with the dramatic, and it may even be unbelievable when we are talking and visualizing. The survival of Krivoruchko Sr., in light of the enormous danger to his life and his coolness, may sound very dramatic. For him, it was very ordinary. He was a trained soldier and an officer, and he did not get scared in the face of danger. He did not talk about his survival, but in his life he used every opportunity to stay alive. He was not a hero, but he was a survivor. He was able somehow to function in places where many could not. Now his mission was to provide shelter for his son, and he would do it in an ordinary way without dramatic rhetoric. He did not express the self well in words, but he did well kinesthetically. He knew that he would always act as was required to keep his son safe. In his fortitude, he did not see any exceptional episodes to talk about, but nevertheless many dramatic episodes did happen. The war had found Krivoruchko Sr. as an instructor of draftees in an army training camp. One day before the outbreak of hostilities, there came an order. All vehicles are to be lined up on a platform and all fuel tanks emptied. He did not participate in a single battle. The entire unit was cut off and surrounded. Everything was ordinary. Captivity and inspections. Columns of prisoners stripped down passed in front of a medical officer, whose only assignment was to determine who among them was circumcised. The Jewish were separated from the others. When Krivoruchko Sr.'s turn came to pass in front of the medical officer, field telephone rang, and the doctor answered it. He was busy talking, and Krivoruchko Sr. joined the group of non-circumcised soldiers unnoticed, and his life was saved. The Jewish soldiers were later executed. For Professor Krivoruchko, the heroic is mainly ordinary actions and deeds that are verbalized or visualized as heroic by attaching to them some significance. In moments of dramatic actions, many did not think that they had done something dramatic. His grandfather did not see anything amazing in his escape from death, but also did not think about how breathtaking it was for him to meet his son in the marketplace. As a trained soldier, he did not think twice about following in an order to empty all fuel tanks from the vehicles and tanks. He did not question any command, even if it was very strange for the high officers to employ such bizarre tactic. As a result of this strange order, he and his fellow soldiers were left to be helpless prey for the fascist collective. He did not feel that it was unusual for the Soviet collective to not join the Geneva Convention regarding the treatment of prisoners of war. He did not feel it was extraordinary that the government of his country, by not joining the Geneva Convention, was enabling the hands of the killers. He also did not feel bewildered that for several weeks he was working on the farm with other prisoners of war. They were in groups of 10. Their work consisted of digging up potatoes and taking turns at going to the marketplace with the peasants as loaders. In the morning, the other 9 prisoners were nonchalant and took it to be very mundane that Krivoruchko Sr. had adopted a homeless boy. They said, "There is enough bread and potatoes for everyone. Let the kid remain." Krivoruchko Sr. mourned for his family and did not see everything as dramatic and as heroic as it was. For him, ordinary and dramatic were the same. He did not talk about it. He did not realize that everything in his life was very dramatic, and at that time it appeared very ordinary. The meeting between survivor and rescuer. In our psyche, is it possible to have a meeting of fragments who are representing survivor and rescuer? The survivor and savior of his son are together in the psyche of Krivoruchko Sr., and it is a very strong unity. He saved the self by his unimaginable luck and courage, and he was able to save his son, too. He was not a hero who gave up his life for causes. He just used the opportunity to survive and to save his son. Professor Krivoruchko stated that there were many survivors and rescuers who would do it without any heroic flair, but his grandfather was unique and did not want to express any drama or pathos. The best purpose of being saved was to do something to justify his survival. Many of the saved did nothing with their lives. They did not save anyone and did not look after their families. They did not care about their obligation, which was providing a base for prolonging the family line. Others were able to continue their family line and save it from extinction. All the members in the Krivoruchko's family had a fragment with an assignment to save lives and to prolong the family line. Krivoruchko Sr. was lucky that he was able to survive and also secure the continuation of his bloodline. The meeting between survivor and rescuer is the most significant one, and it includes a dialogue which may be on a kinesthetic level. This dialogue is one of the most important in our lives. The fragment of the bully splitting from compassion. The childhood fragment of the bully has the capacity to take over our psyche and split us from the feeling of compassion. The bully is a very punitive fragment, and it is associated with the behavior of disorderly children. We do not have the conscious awareness that the bully takes us over. The problems of being a bully start in our childhood when we suffered from bullies. Because our behavior reflects on our children, we secure the arrival of a new pack of bullies because the children depend on us. We are not fulfilling our important obligation of standing up to bullies and protecting a child, and by not protecting a child, we are damaging his psyche so that he grows up to be a weakling. He is not courageous enough to confront his own fragment of a bully. It becomes very nasty when we do not feel that we are responsible for a child. When we do not have the unification with the badly treated child in our psyche, then the fragment of the bully takes over. It is easy to abuse a child because the child does not understand how we may be so vicious and blame the self for our craziness. This is also a reason why the children copy us without understanding the cause behind the observed behavior. As children, we copy the bully's behavior, and when we grow up, our psyche retains 2 fragments, a bully and a victim. When a fragment of an abused child in our psyche meets with a real child, then our fragment of the abused child wants to protect the child, but because of the weakness, he does not. The fragment of a bully takes over our psyche, and then the bully is pushing both our fragment and our helpless child to be victim. The adult who has the fragments of a bully and an abused child is confused and does not understand why he wants to hurt children. The reason why he does not want to offer assistance to any kids is because he is splitting from his own fragment of an abused child. In many instances, the fragment of an abused child is a secret of our psyche, and it is hidden in a closet and guarded. When our psyche hides a fragment of a mistreated child, our psyche is splitting from the feelings of compassion. We always find justification for splitting. As bullies, we are very egocentric and jealous of the attention children receive because we are scared of humiliation. Only few of us get the hidden fragments out of our closets. We are always pretending because we do not have the stomach for meeting the abusive past and experiencing a dialogue. The truth is that as the bully, we are hurting children because we are getting even with the world, which we feel in their past was unjust to us. The bully carefully chooses his victim and skillfully tortures the weak and the scared. Leonia was a perfect target. He was innocent and weak. Evil forces were attacking him because he was small and not ready to deal with the imperfections of the world. He could easily be sacrificed and exterminated. The bully does not miss any opportunity to hurt a child because the bully is afraid of unification with the abused child in his own psyche. Professor Krivoruchko affirmed that paradoxically, the bully mainly wants to hurt the abused fragment of a child in his own psyche. Only the adult who may unify with the abused child in his own psyche is able to protect the other children. The anger towards others is also anger towards the self. When we feel angry with someone else, in reality, we are mainly angry with the self. It is not always true that we get angry if somebody bothers us. Often we are blaming the self for being weak, slow, or ineffective. The anger helps to refocus the feelings of guilt and shame. When anger takes control of our psyche, our actions can become very nasty because anger anesthetizes our psyche from the feelings of shame and disgrace. Underneath, the anger is displeased with the self because we are vulnerable and allow ourselves to be bothered. Often we do not have conscious awareness of the roots of the anger and what is really triggering it. Professor Krivoruchko mentioned that he needed his anger to prove to himself that he was still capable of facing the danger and defending the self. When we are in distress, we are looking for a reason to exhibit protective skills and express anger. The anger also helps us to hold on to the little bits of self-control. When we are stressed, we get angry too often and too easily, and in many instances, the prompts for anger are very insignificant. We are consciously misattributing anger to unrelated irritants. By properly managing our anger, we look only for the correct irritant and do not jump on the closest one. We have many dissimilar triggers of anger. Together with oral, visual, and kinesthetic irritants, the trigger of anger also includes olfactory discomfort. The anger is based on emotion, which is both splitting and unifying. The anger perhaps may have a place in the unification, and because our need of hating sometimes keeps the whole psyche together. As a unifier, the anger may be an effective force against an intruder that is causing a discomfort, but anger can also be a splitter. If we are consciously aware of an unhealthy split, we need to prevent it by any means, because if uncontrolled, it can cause damage to our psyche. Under the splitting command, the fragments that regularly would not think to attack a helpless child suddenly become heartless executors. The split probably was unnoticed, and when it is progressing, it is very dangerous because anger is a quick learner. If a fragment with angry responses was humiliating because the person was confronting a stronger target and perhaps may not win, then he would choose the next target more carefully because he needs to be sure that he would be able to win. Leonia was weak and helpless in front of adults. He already knew that some people may be worse than animals, and he tried to be invisible. He slept under war prisoners' bunks. When asked questions, he gave the same replies that he used to give to the peasants when he begged food, the addition that his aunt had now been evacuated, and he had no place to go. If he had not been for one unforeseen event, father and son may easily have spent the entire winter in the village. Unfortunately, Leonia caught a cold and began to wet his bed while sleeping. The smell did not go unnoticed by the soldiers, and at first they joked about it, but later on they began to grumble. Who is Krivoruchko hiding under the bunk? Who is that dark kid? Is he a gypsy or a Jew? He's smelling up the place and should be gotten rid of. If the Germans find out, we'll all be in trouble. The anger of the soldiers and prisoners of war were triggered by the olfactory irritant, but the real reason was anger with the self. They were defeated warriors and spent their days picking potatoes and living in a barn. They were angry with themselves, and to protect their honor, they needed to find a target to express their anger and to anesthetize their feeling of shame and disgrace. By attacking the weak and helpless child, the anger shaped the minds of others, including their offspring, to be like them. The child was confused and depended on the adults to clear up his confusion, but because the adults were not helping, he continued to be confused. And confused children eventually become miserable adults who also hurt the weak and helpless. By saving someone, we usually are splitting from a comfort zone. When we save someone, we are usually using extra effort and are splitting from a comfort zone. The lifesaver usually goes through unneeded danger and overwhelming emotions. In many instances, the one who has been threatened to be thrown out from a safe place tries to change the stalemate by making an extra effort. We are uncertain what to do and how to avoid rejection. Despite the additional attempt of the rejected part to keep dialogue going, the other side is not answering. We eventually become broad-minded regarding many things, and we accept the fact that we are not able to force anyone to have a positive response. This detail is very hard to admit. We are objective to the information that animals cannot talk, but we do not accept the fact that we do not have the power to hold a dialogue with others. We need the willingness of both sides to get unified in the dialogue. When dialogue happens, we learn how to understand and relate to others, because the dialogue is a fusion. Real dialogue also requires human wisdom. Besides dialogue, the split is the most important process of our psyche. The split may possibly be the reaction of the pain and suffering that requires isolation to heal the wounds. Some splits are based on real pain and suffering, but mostly splits come from altered perception that has nothing to do with real pain and suffering. In many instances, we reject the reality for unproved ideas and unrealistic adventures. In time when fantasy and reality overlap, everyone is in danger of having an altered perception. The notion of splitting carries important independent validity and is not always a failed unification attempt. Meanwhile, we are not looking for any dialogues with the side that, for minor discomfort, rejects us and sentences us to die. The psyche of rejectors mirrors the world around them. The evil part of our psyche is looking for excuses to deny others a chance to be saved. We are very quick to reject just by providing the complementary rigid justifications. The most important rationale for denial is that by rejecting, we are saving our comfort. The threats to be thrown again on the streets of the occupied city were very frightening for young Leonia. The rejectors needed to split from their own fragments, which loved the comfort of the safe place. The split needed to be done immediately because the delay probably would bring an end to their lives. The split from the comfort was an attempt at getting rid of oppression and the threat of annihilation, and to get to a place that the opportunity for future dialogues could begin. For Professor Krivoruchko, who was a descendant of this family, it was important to provide a safe existence for others. The Savior, first of all, needs to have a desire to save lives. Later, the Son and the Father were eventually surrounded by love. They would feel safe and would not bring any discomfort to their saviors. Dialogue is only possible with trust. Dialogue is only possible in the atmosphere of trust, when we have complete confidence in others. We need to feel safe with others before we open up. Usually, we are not ready to open up and need special surroundings. The setting of the place does not make a difference, but the atmosphere inside is very important. Even when the place of the setting is dangerous, we still distinguish the spot as a place of dialogue. This is why the meetings and dialogues do not come right away, and we do not need to accept the ordinary levels of preparedness to be ready for them. For Professor Krivoruchko, the need to have a dialogue was a strong motivator for looking around and searching his surroundings. Sometimes we do not know that we are in the place that is very close to the one we are looking for, and we pass without stopping at the place of our desire. Then we spend a lifetime dreaming about the place of the meeting. What hurts very badly is that many times we look over the significant place, and because of our limitations, we do not have the vision to recognize it, so we move away. We keep looking for it, and only later in our life do we realize that a long time ago we had already found the place, and that we had missed an opportunity to embrace a meeting. We are completely unaware of our destiny and where we have a chance to hold a real dialogue. Many people live in peace and wealth, but may not dream about meetings. Perhaps it's because we are in a dangerous place, and suddenly we have a meeting between the ordinary and the exceptional. The ordinary had the extraordinary luck to be blessed with exceptional happiness. The dialogue and meeting was the unification of our spirit and destiny. Through this meeting, the ordinary became enlightened with the qualities of the exceptional, and the exceptional got something from the ordinary one. After the meeting, our life was not wasted and had a meaning. It did not matter if we had meeting with dialogue or the dialogue came after the meeting. The most important thing was that we had something that only a few have through their entire lives. In the meantime, we do not know about our future. We just want to run away from a dangerous place, and we need to find safe surroundings. Krivoruchko Sr. decided to leave the village as soon as possible because of the mutterings about the need for his son to leave would only lead to disaster. He had heard by then that there were partisans in the woods, and he tried to learn how they could be found.
They suddenly got to the partisans, a small group of local inhabitants, and some escaped prisoners of war who were camping in the middle of the bog. Discipline was weak, but everyone knew his duties. The commander was not an army man, but a former school principal. The peasants would join the unit with their entire families, bringing their belongings, their livestock, and their lived-in mud huts. The Krivoruchkos were told to share a hut with Stefan Luchko's family. Stepan was a former geography teacher. He was a Ukrainian, and his wife was part of the domineering ethnicity. He had brought his wife from far away when he was a young student, and she was a woman of the village. She was not a beauty queen, but she was very pleasant, good-hearted, clean, and organized. An icon hung in a corner of the hut. The Luchkos treated the newcomers well and helped them to settle down. Stepan Luchko and his wife Galina were generous and very tactful, and they never asked silly questions. After supper, at the open fire, they usually had a discussion. Stepan Luchko had enough knowledge to speak on any subject, and he was very well informed and interesting. Krivoruchko Sr. often contributed to the discussion, especially regarding economic questions. Before the war, he had studied accounting. Other partisans would join them around the fire, and Leonya and Stepan Luchko's daughter, Marinka, was especially fond of these gatherings. Marinka was slightly younger than Leonya and was a well-mannered, clever girl. Though the children did not understand what was being said, they listened to every word. Stepan often expressed his horror at the news of the atrocities committed against the Jews. Then Krivoruchko Sr. decided to reveal everything to him. He told him about his own tragedy, which was part of the Jewish tragedy. For partisans who lived in mud huts, he was not unique. Krivoruchko Sr. and his son felt very safe and were able to open up and have a dialogue. All of a sudden, in the most volatile place in the world, and in a mud hut, they could have a meeting. The meeting of Krivoruchko Sr. and Luchko was very important because their lives were fused together forever due to the meeting and dialogue which might be a part of the cosmic design. The hero, Stepan Luchko, who always knew what was right and what was the most important for him, was meeting the pragmatic man who had never done more than what was required. Krivoruchko Sr. never had any ambitions to be a leader or a distinguished figure. He always wanted to be like everyone else. He loved his family and never loved any ideas or ideologies. He was an ordinary man, and compared to him, Luchko was exceptionally bright and enthusiastic. God gave Krivoruchko Sr. a very important present, which was in the form of an extraordinary luck. The meaning of the meeting of those two was that in the most dangerous place in the world, the miserable soul was able to find one who understood it, created a safe haven, and initiated dialogue. We need to find a villain inside our psyche. When we are dealing with a villain, we need to find one inside our psyche. First, we need to deal with the self. When we meet our own villain fragment, we may well be strong. Only the fragment that experienced the meeting and dialogue may represent our psyche in dealing with the villain inside of us. Professor Krivoruchko explains that the faces of evil are deceptive and sometimes appear as a loving one. They speak softly, but in general the wickedness is presented by violence and hatred. These are killers, bullies, criminals, rapists, kidnappers, and anyone who has an evil mind. If our psyche is carrying only faces of hate and nothing of love, then we are hateful. In wartime, the ordinary mind is preoccupied with the desire to have justice and what to do with victory. The ordinary man is struggling with questions about how the world can deal with the villains and how to stop them in the future. Krivoruchko Sr. knew that the causative tragedy in his life were the carriers of the radical ideas. He understood that he did not have the right to forgive because the victims did not give him this right, but he also did not need to kill in retaliation. He felt that if he ended up being part of a victorious force occupying the village of his enemies, it was not justifiable for him to kill several villagers as revenge for his family's death. Often he saw that partisans were killing the surrendered enemy soldiers. He rejected the thoughts of retaliation and knew that he would never do that. He understood that he would not hurt a helpless one who happened to be an enemy soldier. Otherwise, he was not better than the villains that did not show any mercy to his family. He recognized that he could not find any easy justification for killing, and he had already discovered and dealt with the villain inside of himself. He knew that to kill was easiest than to have mercy and not kill. By refusing to kill, he appeared weak, but he would never hurt a helpless one in front of him. This discovery happened because of the meeting with the Luchko's family. In his interaction with him, Krivoruchko Sr. found that the base for a dialogue was a willingness to move beyond his own pain and understand others. The dialogue required a particular ground, and the special soil would possibly nurture the seeds of the dialogue. Dialogue was also nurtured by surrendering to compassion. Trust had many faces, too. We carry those faces everywhere and for all of our life. Those faces are the base of our strength. To grow and mature, we need the faces of love, which have to be mothers and fathers and grandparents, neighbors, favorite teachers, spiritual teachers, or even friends. They are inside our psyche, and we will not lose them. The ordinary man, Krivoruchko Sr., did not join the villains who, without any remorse, killed and beheaded the suspects. The victims did not wear any uniform and did not carry any weapons. For villains, the massacre of defenseless was not an obstacle, because the villains always found justification for their hatred. It often happened that they justified killing because the victim belonged to an ethnicity or religion that the killers did not like. The villains could be in the same uniforms as the victims. In many instances, the killers were very predictable. What can we do when we catch the killers? This question sounds naive because for a long time the villains killed without any remorse or guilt. But really, what would we possibly do with these terrorists? And could we kill them? The quick answer is that we need to kill as many villains as we can. The other answer is that before we kill, we need to recognize that the problem is within us and to acknowledge the fact that a terrorist might be living within us. Sometimes our moral victory is more glorious than a tactical one. To have a moral victory and to deal with the surrounding villains, we need to learn how to deal with one who is hiding inside of us. Only by dealing with our own villain will we learn how to deal with the villain surrounding us. It is almost impossible to hurt without emotions. Is it impossible to hurt someone without emotions and to replace hate with indifference? During our life, we hurt many people, some of whom we hate and some whom we love. But really, it is not easy to hurt someone without expressing any emotion. The feeling of detestation is more natural than other feelings because it anesthetizes us to the sufferings of others. If we express repugnance, it means that something fundamental was taken from us and our main response is hate. Typically, extreme distrust goes together with doubts and destruction. By justifying the hurting of others, we are hurting the self more. When we decide to hurt others, we feel confined, agitated, and miserable, and we give up the good feelings of being contained and serene. With hate, we are always splitting. Many feelings may be replaced by hate. The feeling of love is fragile, easily lost to hate, and is very hard to put it back. Because we are not satisfied with hate, we feel that something prevents us from being complete, though we do not know what it is. The answer is very simple. We are missing love. When we look inside the self, often we see revulsion. In the depths of our hearts, instead of hate, we are looking for love. We feel complete when we are in love or meet someone nice, and then we have the sensation that life gives us something precious. With love, we engage in the process of unification. It is a very delicate task because love is very delicate and may be replaced by hate at any moment. With time, Stepan Luchko and his wife Galina became even friendlier toward the Krivoruchkos. As for Leonya's cold, it went away after Galina gave him some home remedies. Krivoruchko Sr. was thankful to Luchko's family. Krivoruchko Sr. was thinking about his friends. They are so beautiful, and they live with love. It is very hard to find anyone else like them. It is sad that nowadays we have hate inside of us. Probably the hate makes us energized and powerful. What is the result of this power? Is the biggest achievement of hate a lot of distraction and ruin? Where do I get the strength to stop? Apparently, I do hate my enemies with all of my heart. I have the power to bring a lot of harm to them, but that is one thing I do not want. I do not want that because by hating them, I become their partner in hate. My enemies are winning when I hate them. I would not be distinct from them. I make them very important and they're rewarded by becoming a part of my life. How do I resist hate? It is very easy to hate my enemies. I do not need to make an effort because it is a natural process. So what am I supposed to do? It is impossible to imagine that I just ignore them after what they did to my family. No, I cannot ignore them. I also do not want to spend the rest of my life just hating them and eventually becoming like them.
It is a catch-22. One thing I know is that they ought to be stopped. I also somehow need to protect myself and my closest one from the hate. I acknowledge that I do not know how to stop the hate in any other way than by using force. I wish we knew special techniques to stop cancer or other illnesses without surgery. Doctors are cutting out the cancers. Do doctors hate the cancer? No, they just do what is necessary. They are just keeping their patient alive. I do not know if brute force is an effective method of healing, though I think that the force is probably a needed solution until we become more advanced and find something else. I only know that I may well get rid of the cancer with any available means, but I also need to have a limit to my hate. Professor Krivoruchko says that when doctors cut the cancer, their patients are under anesthesia and they do not feel much. Nevertheless, the doctors in an operating room still become machines and the patients are objects. When we retaliate against enemies, we want them to feel pain. We are hurting the invader because we are forced to protect the self. We do it with all of our strength, and we want the person to suffer a lot. How is it possible that we get anesthetized, stop our emotions, and become unresponsive to the feelings of pain? We may only do it by becoming a heartless machine and by treating others as objects. If our survival is at stake and we do not have any other choice, are we allowed to split from our feelings and become a machine of hurting? When we intentionally hurt others, it is not easy to do it without any emotion, but sometimes we need to hurt them in order to stop them from hurting us. Might we hurt someone without any feelings of guilt? When we hate someone and hurt them, we do not feel guilt. When we hurt someone without hate, then we become a piece of equipment. It is hard to hurt without feelings, and not too many of us can do it. We are not monsters and we are not built for it. We are not a device without feelings. The answer is that it is better to deal with our emotions than to hurt without feeling. We do not know what future effect our actions will have. We may learn how to hurt without any emotion and as a result suffer even more. Establishing a solid identity usually aligns us with love and care. The establishment of a stable psyche with a solid identity usually results in an alignment with love and care. The love and care are the unifying forces that create a new configuration for the psyche. The vigilance psyche mirrors the external world, which has polarities, but it is inclined in one direction. The vigilante wants to reverse the poles replay, the past in clashing directions. The past and future become significant only if they are connected to the trauma and activities related to the trauma, which are the acts of retaliation to stop the possible reoccurrence and to have closure. In the vigilante psyche, all brain organization is around the trauma. During the process of reconstruction, the psyche gets more split. The new organization contains some good, but also many evil fragments which are not reconcilable. Those fragments are willing to punish the world for perceived sufferings and oppression. Without any second thought, they're ready to kill anyone who does not share their ideas. The first leader of the Soviet collective was a vigilante who retaliated against the ruling clan for the unjustifiable death of his brother. His mother, also a vigilante, financed any intentions to destroy the monarchy and agitate the power holders. She succeeded by starting an uprising. Her son actually destroyed the pre-Soviet ruling family together with the ruling class by making false promises and creating many mass graves. The fascist collective was also a vigilante, fighting for something unreal via illusionary promises and leaving behind dead bodies in gas chambers. Our world is on the fire because of the hate, but many that are not able to resolve their grievances, and as a result we continue to hate. We do it because we want the acknowledgement of the atrocities from others, but others refuse to take responsibility and do not admit to what's happened in the past. Many powerful leaders, driven by their vigilante fragments, are not interested in ending the conflict and want to find salvation in hate. They use the reverse, mirroring the evil and doing the same that was done to them. Vigilantes are obsessed and do not care about the rules and regulations. They have their own ideas about how to take revenge. Some of the vigilantes imagine the suffering of others and do not want any compromises. Even the suffering of others was only in their own imagination. Many societies will not accept the lynch law. Nevertheless, there are many various vigilantes because the villain inside of us will never stop. Some of us imagine others' misery or transfer our own guilt onto others. In some Eastern countries, the victims who have powerful protectors may be forgiven for the acts of punishment. In Western society, the punishment by the victim is against the law. We still have many unresolved conflicts that are very dramatic and cannot ever be resolved. We are trying to deal with them in a civilized manner. Nevertheless, we are not forgiving the self for being a victim. We are not willing to recognize that instead of the enemies, we are punishing the self, because somehow the perpetrator gets inside us and calls for more blood. We do not know yet that punishing does not relieve hate. We, as self-appointed vigilantes, want not only the violators to suffer, but also their relatives, associates, and even some who were never even involved in the violations. As self-appointed vigilantes, we have very unsophisticated logic. We feel that even the victims are often sick and weak. The law enforcers do nothing, and we have a responsibility to be the doer. We take seriously our responsibility as defenders, and we are ready to hurt anyone. But in reality, we are not hurting the guilty. It is very important to punish the guilty, but not to dispense the guilt. The guards in the concentration camps were the antisocial, and their sycophants were from very many ethnical diverse groups. They were executors of innocent civilians. In the vigilante's judgment, everyone who belongs to the perpetrator's ethnic group is a candidate for castigation. It is the logic of blame and collective punishment that spreads across the whole ethnicity, and we need to have a stable psyche to understand it. In a solid identity and a stable psyche, the majority of the fragments are reconciled. We want to build the grounds of love and care after the tragic loss of our significant others. It is most important that we have the strength to withstand the distractions. Professor Krivoruchko mentions that hate creates the villain's configuration. His grandfather made a tremendous effort to keep his psyche in line with love and care. When we have a stable psyche, we are putting a lot of effort into keeping our psyche in order, because under the storm of hate, our psyche falls apart. Hate has a very destructive tendency. When hate took over the world, it was falling apart and ended up being ruined. The intolerable psyches are repulsive in the form of the separated fragments lying everywhere. The displaced fragments in the rigid psyche are comparable to the ruins of a destroyed construction, which is the site of mental destruction. We need to find a way to prevent the world from the distribution of hate. Our identity is becoming more fragmented. When the psyche is going through the process of fierce splitting and is falling apart under horrible events, only the fragments, which are crucial to survival, are keeping the psyche together. The function of our psyche is similar to the process in our bodies when we are starving. Then the porky fatness goes away and only a carcass that holds the construction is visible. After the trauma, only the most useful fragments in our psyche are together and functioning. For our survival, we need only a few fragments that contain the basic skills, and then in the future,